like looking back, I remember being in the likes of those courses and comparing ourselves to other companies, especially Dublin software companies were big on the startup scene at the time, but they were focused on fundraising. We were focused on selling. That's what we, like I was a salesman, I'm still a salesman. I was focused 100% on sales and cash flow. That's what I woke up in the morning and thought about. And I had a very traditional sales process. It was like cold calling, it was setting up meetings, it was like getting quotes out quickly, it was following up with the customer. It was very, very traditional and basic, and probably you could ask AI and it'll give you that answer of do these things. Um, but it's still a discipline that you have to do.
Dermot O'Shea, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks, Connor. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Not at all. So, let's start with Taoglas. What is it? Who are the customers? And um, whatever you're comfortable sharing on a size, maybe just one number about, could be revenue, number of staff, or whatever you're comfortable kind of sharing on that side.
Yeah. So what is it? We're basically an antenna company. So we design and manufacture antennas for wireless communication. So mainly cellular, GPS, Wi-Fi antennas. You'd have a multitude of antennas in your phone. We don't do the ones for your phones, but we do them for things like your cars, your trucks, your electricity meter, your parking meters, your vending machines, stuff like that. Um, we've got over 350 employees, 10 global locations, and this year we'll do over $100 million in sales. We've been in business since 2004. And we've ambitious growth plans for the future.
What about, so tell me about just antennas for a minute. So you mentioned vending machines. Is it to connect the particular hardware to something else that would give you data or something on it? Like, what is the antenna for? And yeah, I see you looking at me there, but I literally have no idea about this industry. So, what does it do? Why would I want an antenna on something in my
No, like
business?
that's the common reaction, you know what I mean? Is like people think, that's an old technology. Like we don't need antennas anymore. You know what I mean? But you actually have a lot of them in all the devices that need to communicate. So, it could be you have them in your payment terminal in the retail store to process the payment over Wi-Fi or cellular. That's why you have it on the vending machine, so you can just pay for the product with your credit card. Same with the parking meter, but they're where we do a lot is in transportation. So being able to monitor an asset or communicate with that asset, where is it? Or if something goes wrong with the asset, let us know. And what's the best route for the asset to take, that we can give it the best route from a safety perspective, from an insurance savings perspective. So it's all about data around the movement of assets, really. And they all need to be connected to the internet. It's commonly called the Internet of Things. It used to be called machine to machine. So we end up in consumer devices, but we're not in them. So we are in things like cat trackers and dog trackers and stuff like that we would kind of call consumer. But our main business is more industrial technology. So like factory automation, robotics, autonomous vehicles and stuff like that. And so you need antennas so that you know where it is, so it knows where it wants to go. And then you also need to connect to that to monitor it. And then you have backup systems in place as well. And then with the cell phones, we've had, innovations like NFC for Apple Pay, ultra wideband and things like that. And they've been adopted by a lot of the industrial technology market as well. So a lot of companies are deploying and connecting more devices, and they also need more antennas on those devices. You just may not necessarily see them.
How did you get into this industry and this business? Like, what was it? Was it something that you'd been working in previously, or how did you end up in
No,
it?
to be honest, I did some science in UCD, a bit of physics, but that it definitely wasn't from where it came. Maybe I had some of the theory in there and the basics, but I wanted to be in business. And so I got into sales, and I'd always been in sales. But my wife and I were in Taiwan in 2003, and I played, the best way for Westerners to meet was with the Taipei Celts Gaelic Football Club. We used to kind of play soccer against the English and compromise rules against the Aussies and touch rugby against the South Africans. Um, and I met another Irish man through that, and we both really wanted to be entrepreneurs and have our own business, and we both were in technology. And we'd started looking at different things, products that we could sell into Asia from Europe. And I really wanted to sell more consumer goods into the Irish retail market at the time. And we came across antennas, and we'd been selling a couple of different products into Europe, and they just got immediate traction because there was companies who needed antennas, and they weren't able to, get bespoke solutions or custom solutions from large Asian manufacturers that were making antennas and other products. So we saw that there was a niche and an opportunity for a specialized antenna company. And we started by selling antenna components to larger antenna companies. And we got into some automotive deals with that very early on. And then we started developing our own antennas when we started talking to customers directly. So it wasn't really planned.
Why were you in Taipei in the first place?
Yeah, my wife and we just were over there. It happened that my sister was there speaking English, or teaching English, and speaking Chinese.
Yeah.
And we had both, we traveled a lot, and we both were interested in trying out Taiwan as well. And both from the cultural and the business perspective. Personally, I knew there was a lot of opportunity there because Taiwan was taking off, and I had seen like the retailers in Europe, like in Ireland, I was dealing with a lot of retailers that were buying electronics from the UK because none of them had the capacity or demand to buy directly from a JVC or a Sharp. So they were buying it from JVC Sharp in the UK, kind of like Ireland was looked on as a UK region because at that time you had a lot of small family retail stores in each town in Ireland. And they would buy, maybe they'd want a couple of pallets from JVC and a couple of pallets from Sharp, but they never were able to buy full container loads. So my idea was to be like, rather than going through Germany or the UK, I would be a distributor to the Irish retailers because I knew them, and I knew that collectively they'd have enough business to go direct, but like individually there was nobody tying them together. And so that was like one idea that I had, for example.
And were they your customers? Is that how you knew
Yeah,
the retailers?
we were
Okay.
doing
Yeah.
like logistic services for actually it was more JVC and Sharp, and these guys in the UK were my customers, and the retailers were their customers, but I was working with the retailers and seeing how much extra they had to pay, just not just for freight, but the markup that everyone's putting on it as you go along. And kind of I see it's a similar dynamic today with Australia. People kind of feel like they can charge a remote island more because you're used to paying more for freight, logistics, import taxes, tariffs, and all that. So they feel like I can kind of charge more for that.
Okay. So did you then go to the manufacturers? You kind of saw this, and did you go to the manufacturers then in
Tried,
Taipei?
but I know it's Chinese, so I underestimated that. I thought it was like Hong Kong, that you could speak, if you had English, you're good, but that was not the case in Taiwan. You need Chinese. And so um, that's when, a lot of the Taipei Celts guys were Irish guys living in Taiwan that had been sent over there on FOSS programs.
Right.
And some of them are still there. Some of them, there's one of them still working with us today. And yeah, my business partner at the time, he was fluent in Chinese, so he was great at dealing with the vendors and the factories and whoever we needed over there.
So you essentially set up. But like, could you maybe talk about your first customer or something, just to get a sense of how it worked? So you had the Chinese connection essentially, and you were your business partner was speaking Chinese, uh, getting everything manufactured and set up, and then you were on the customer side, I suppose, in
Yeah.
Ireland. Yeah.
Yeah, we came back here in 2004, registered a company here, and then our first customer was actually an antenna company in Kent. It was a R&D center for a Japanese antenna company, and they were doing mainly the shark fins that you see on the vehicle. So they had a program for Ford Focus and the Ford Galaxy that was running way behind. They were having a ton of issues with the GPS antenna, and we fixed the issue so that the antenna was getting detuned. They had no one to tune the antenna for them, and we were able to get the factory in Taiwan to do that for us. They were delighted, and it's kind of just being in the right place at the right time, because we know now how difficult it is to get qualified into an automotive program. But obviously, if it's hitting the fan, then waivers can be put in place. They can rush things. They visited the factory in Taiwan. They realized we were just contracting it out, but they were happy with that because we were managing the engineering process, we were managing the communications. And then from that, we were like, I know it probably seems bizarre now, but antennas is quite an old industry. And a lot of the large antenna companies at that time, they didn't have great information on the website, if they even had a website. So we were putting data sheets and information and guidelines and integration guides onto a website. And it was also finding customers for us. But as well as that, when we contacted people, they saw the website and they thought we were bigger than we were. It's like we had credibility or something like that. And that really helped us as well. And we quickly became very informed on antennas. And then from that Ford project, we realized how many people were struggling with antenna selection, antenna sourcing, getting something that meets their needs. So that time there was a lot of car kits. So you would get into the car with your mobile phone, you would clip it into a holder in the car, and it would connect to an antenna that was a little bar on the strip of your windscreen. So like everybody probably in Ireland had one of those at the time. But anybody that needed a cellular antenna, the manufacturers would say, use that one, because they're only a couple of bucks and we're shipping millions of them all over the world. But that doesn't suit everybody. If you put that outside or put that on a parking meter or on a truck, it's not going to last. So we started customizing for other use cases. The first one was a stolen vehicle tracking system for Jaguar Land Rover. So it was a startup in Birmingham called Autotext at the time, and people couldn't get insurance in the UK without a stolen vehicle tracking system. And they wanted to design antennas that were a little different, in that you could covertly mount them somewhere in the vehicle. So when they broke into the car, they would cut the antenna cables off the tracking device because they'd be able to find them easily. And so they wanted something that they couldn't find, and that also the connections on it were disguised as AM FM antennas and not as GPS and cellular antennas, so that the criminals would think there's no point in cutting those. So that was a big win for us, because when we got those antennas made for those guys, we were able to sell those to anybody doing stolen vehicle tracking systems. And at that time, there was a big market in South Africa, Brazil, for those kind of systems. Um, and then in the US, there was a big market called subprime lending. So when they lend cars out on subprime loans, there's a tracking device in there. People don't realize it. And when you don't pay your loan back, they call you 3 times. If you don't answer, they track the car and they take it back. Kind of evil use cases, but they were very lucrative at the time.
And was it just, talk to me just a little bit about kind of setting up the company. Was it just the two of you at the start? And did you raise any money? Did you need money to kind of bridge the gap between the two areas, if you like, Ireland, UK, and
No, we'd no money. We had two very supportive wives who, like, we'd no salary for 2 years. And so, like, my wife had a good job in the medical device industry. And so she got a company car. So she gave me her car, which was my first car. And, she supported me for the first 2 years. And then we started getting into, like, we got done a start your own business program with the Wexford Enterprise Board. They gave us an employment grant for the first employee. I started a course in WIT that was called the Southeast Enterprise Platform Program, and that gave you like a grant. You did the course every Monday, and you got like a grant that helped. Small grant, but it helped because you'd no salary, right, to live off, and it helped with some business expenses if you had travel expenses and things like that. Because it was all about creating an overseas market, um, and so that really helped. And then it was just from cash flow we started generating money, and we just put it all back into product development and generating more sales. And then in 2005 we had a private investor that helped us, that invested um 50,000 for 10% of the company, but he had nothing to go off of, so it was a huge risk. Ended up being a great bet because he exited the business 3 years ago, did very well. But that we used that 50K to tool those two products for that stolen vehicle tracking system. And we actually have those antennas still today. So it ended up being, it was great for us as well because we couldn't get loans, um, and we didn't have any, we were still quite young, and we didn't have experience raising money. And so we never really, wanted to either, because we wanted to be in control ourselves. So he was great, supportive, a passive investor. We'd send him the annual accounts every year, and he never asked for any more than that. As long he was happy, because his share value was going up every year. But we didn't really raise any other money except for that.
Did you have goals at that stage? So you said you wanted to be entrepreneurs and you wanted to start this business, and then it kind of takes off a little bit. Did you have any? Did you look out 10 years or even a year at that stage just to see, I'd like to be here by this time, and what did that look like? What did your kind of your view of the future look like when you went into it?
We wanted to have a global Irish technology company. That was number one. And then, our first goal was to have 1 million in sales. And then we got to 1 million, and it was to have 10 million in sales. And then, we got to 10 million, and it was to have 100 million in sales. And now we're there, and we have a new target. So you don't really stop. But, it was always just growth. That's what it was. And, even today I feel, you know, we work very hard, and we go at a very fast pace, and we love winning and we hate losing, and I don't think anything has changed, and we never really patted ourselves on the back when we got to 1 million or 10 million or 100 million. You know what I mean? Because you look around and you see all the opportunity, and you see how big some of the other companies are, and you realize there's still huge potential.
Was it? I mean, was there ever a moment, you kind of said it kind of took off when you started doing the antennas, but was there ever a moment that it looked like you might not get to your next target, right? Was it ever like that, or was it just
Oh
keep
no,
plowing ahead?
for sure. Like for the first couple of years, yes. I'd say the only one that believed in me was my wife, Kira. To be honest, everyone else thought you've no chance. You know what I mean? Because there's at that time the only antenna companies were very big companies like Amphenol, who've been on the Nasdaq for 26 years and do billions of dollars in sales, and they're selling all sorts of other similar type components. And then we're we don't have any track record. We don't have any credibility. We've no money behind us either. We were using other people's products with other people's brand on them to sell, and we just, we didn't really have anything, to be honest. So I don't think, you know, and that, you know, that voice gets into you a lot in the early days, because if you're telling yourself the same thing, sure, what chance do we have? But like, we just kept, we did like big, when we stepped back and we looked at it, we knew like this was a growing market. GPS was taking off at the time with all location based services. Um, Cellular was taking off because they just bought out cellular modules, that so anybody could kind of design a wireless product with cellular. And back then it was 2G. And so we knew there was we knew there was a big market coming, and antennas were needed for every device. And at that time, we thought, hey, they need two antennas, not just one. Um, and now it's multiple. So I do always think when when you have those doubts, you bring yourself back to the fundamentals. Do you know what I mean? Is there a market? Is it growing? Is there demand for the product? Can we get the product designed? Do we have enough money to keep going? And like I got some good support in the early days as well, particularly locally. And from another businessman and our accountant and auditor at the time. And they were like, focus on cash flow, get cash flow statement, which we didn't have, and we didn't do audited accounts. And it was like, why would we do it? Sure, I have the cash flow in my head. Do you know what I mean? And they were like, no, this is a discipline you have to get right. And so we did that from the start, which also helped. Do you know what I mean? And I do think, like looking back, I remember being in the likes of those courses and comparing ourselves to other companies, especially Dublin software companies were big on the startup scene at the time, but they were focused on fundraising. We were focused on selling. That's what like I was a salesman. I'm still a salesman. I was focused 100% on sales and cash flow. That's what I woke up in the morning and thought about. And I had a very traditional sales process. It was like cold calling. It was setting up meetings. It was like getting quotes out quickly. It was following up with the customer. It was very, very, traditional and basic, and probably you could ask AI and it'll give you that answer of do these things. Um, but it's still a discipline that you have to do.
Is that still the process today, even at the size you are now, compared to just you at the start? Is it still part of the process?
Probably, that I better not say yes or no in case one of the sales guys listens. But like, obviously not, because these days a lot of stuff is coming at us. So like we're using a lot more like, systems and AI tools and all to manage queries, but for like, and cold calls, who does cold calls today? Like you wouldn't answer the phone from a number you didn't know.
Well, it's funny you say that, but my wife works in sales for a US tech company here in Dublin. That's all she does is cold calling. So, and I was actually surprised by that when she started. So I was like, who's answering the phone? But apparently people are doing it, you know?
You know what? If it's relevant, do you know what I mean? I always appreciate when something is not like spam-ish. You know what I mean? Like companies come at us with innovative materials or, new ideas about how to improve our products. Or recently we had like a large marketing firm that specializes in lead management and stuff like that were setting up an event, and they were bringing very relevant customers to it. And like a young, like probably graduate, she left a message on my phone that was just an excellent message, where she'd researched our website. She knew exactly who our target market was. She name dropped companies that we deal with and that we want to deal with, and just explained it very well in a minute and a half. And I actually called her back, and now one of our VP of sales in that area is actually signed a contract with her and her company. So sales is still all about relationships. It's all about how do you build up the trust quickly. Like we all get a lot of spam these days. But it's still the same today. A lot of people, unlike your wife, they will not pick up the phone and they will not call people. They will want to shortcut it, and they will want to do it the easy way by sending an email or a LinkedIn message. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like, I have respect for people that cold call because people don't want to do it. But when you cold call somebody and then you meet them, and then you're building up the trust. Do you know what I mean? And that's what you need. Like, yeah, like people might, you buy small products maybe that you don't, okay, I made a bad decision there, but we're selling to Fortune 1000 companies. They don't buy from you if they don't know you, if they don't trust you at various levels within the organization. So you have to go to trade shows, you have to meet them, you have to have dinners with them, you have to, go and visit them at their site. You have to get to know their product. And because they're giving you very valuable intellectual property about their future products. And you can't get that without trust. They also give us their products. They send us their products, and we test our products inside theirs and give them reports. So that's a lot of trust. So I love sales. I think it's still, you know, if I still always tell young people that want to get into business or want to be entrepreneurs, the best place to start is sales, because you're doing uncomfortable things. You're asking people for money. You're asking people for orders. And not everyone's comfortable doing that. And if you want to be successful in business, you have to get comfortable doing that.
How did you end up in the US then? So things were going well. Were you based here at the
Yeah.
time? Yeah. So and then here as in Ireland for any who's listening. And then how did you end up then in San Diego?
Yeah, no, I'm from Enniscorthy. Like, this is where we registered a company here. We were selling globally from here. So I would like travel all over the world doing those meetings that we just talked about, cold calling people, doing the meetings. And, if they didn't answer the phone, you follow up with an email or a letter. Imagine that. Um, and, in 2007, we got our first US customer. It was a company in California called Calamp. They're still a customer today, and they were doing tracking devices for that subprime lending market, and they were doing telematics systems for trucks and fleet management systems, and they were developing a new product line, and they hired a consultant to do the antenna selection piece. So he was coming in as a consultant. He was evaluating all the different antennas in the market. He was picking one, and then once it was picked, he was out. He picked us because we modified the antenna for him in a way that he needed. We got on very well, and he became our first engineer in the United States. And he hired two other guys. He didn't like doing the business side, so he hired a manager, kind of a general manager slash salesperson. And so, but what we really needed was like a sales team, customer service. We could see the opportunity that was there, and we needed a premises. He was using the upstairs of his mate's factory, and we were designing his friend's antennas for in exchange for rent. And it was great because we didn't have that kind of money back then. And the three engineers were working on like, we would charge the customer for a design fee, and we would give them half the money. That's the way so they weren't even on a salary, so they were kind of crazy as well. And then our VP of sales that's still with us today, he came on commission only because he believed in it, and he'd no salary either. But we really needed to get up to the next level. So my wife Kira was on maternity leave with her second child. Um, and so I said, like, can we spend just 6 months in the US setting up the company, hiring the right people, and then we can, because it was getting difficult to manage it from here. You're 8 hours ahead. You don't really know what people are up to. And we had some issues that popped up that were, you realized someone needs to be there.
I've heard also, Dermot, from people who they start off here on this this side of the Atlantic. They go over to America. That number one, it's an expensive place to do business. There's a huge opportunity usually there, but there's something that's a little bit um uh y- scary is not the word. I can't think of the word, but there's something that kind of prevents people from breaking through sometimes. Did you have any difficulty at the start?
Yeah, it was the cost. You know what I mean? Like you mentioned, like, we thought 6 months, maybe 1 year, we come back home. But when we started identifying the right people, they were like looking for hundreds of thousands of dollars in salary, and we couldn't afford it. You know what I mean? So it took longer. That project took longer. And I'm still there 15 years later most of the time, right? But yeah, that was the challenge, was the level of salaries. You have to provide healthcare, um, which is incredibly expensive as well. You have to get insurance for everything. There's a lot of costs to rent. Like, those guys were in San Diego. Like, you wouldn't set up in San Diego if you were starting off, because it's way more expensive than a lot of places in the US. But yeah, the costs are insane. But the opportunity is also insane, right? It's the scale, the size of the projects were much bigger. The decisions get made way faster. So, like, when we were here in Europe, we were doing well. We'd good business at that time: South Africa, Brazil, and the UK. But trying to get new customers in Germany, France was like so slow. Oh, we need to see you in the global market first. Oh, well, and then we need to see what customers you have in Germany, and then we want you to see you have a German premises and a German, team and stuff like that. And it was kind of like every time we tick a box for them, there was like, well, we want to see these, and we've been dealing with these guys for 20 years.
Like it's not just enough to be in the EU and to have that global
Not
kind of
back then.
market. Yeah,
Yeah, not
yeah.
back then. And I do think, as a hardware company coming out of Ireland, I have to be honest, I don't think they trusted it, you know. So they but the Americans is different. It's like they love they love, people that are greedy and are have a bit of cheek and are willing to like push hard and are willing to like just do it, like to go and meet them, to bring them out for drinks. And like the Irish, I think, are one of our major main talents is we are brilliant with people. We can go out and have a good time and build up rapport and trust with any nation in the world. Do you know what I mean? No matter who they are. Um, Even if we don't necessarily like them, right? We're still good at that, you know? Um, and I think, to be honest, like my experience is Americans love it when Irish people are coming to visit them. Do you know what I mean? They love it when an Irish person is bringing them out for dinner or bringing them out for drinks or bringing them to the ball game. They really like I met zero resistance to that. Um, and you're building up that trust, you're building up that rapport. But the decisions in America, it's just instant. If you're in the right place at the right time, if your price is right, if the product performs well, they will give you a shot. And they have this like, if it doesn't work out, they just go, then I'll go back to the other guy. Whereas in Europe, I feel like the companies still have a fear. If it doesn't work out, I might lose my job. Do you know what I mean? Like the Americans just go, yeah, we have to take chances. We have to bring in new vendors. I want people that are faster. I want, the gritty guys, the guys that are making it happen, the guys that deliver to me faster. That's valuable. And so the speed of them switching vendors is like there's nowhere else like it, in my opinion.
I spoke to someone recently, another business owner who had started a business in the US during the global financial crisis. It was kind of 2012 here, and he was splitting his time between America and Ireland. And he had said that he loved getting over to America because he was just in Ireland at the time. It was kind of very dark time for a lot of businesses and for a lot of people. And he just said getting over there and just having a dose of positivity every time he went was something that was kind of really helpful to him. Did you find that about the culture, or when you were over there, just I mean, the speed of decisions is one thing, but was there anything about the positive culture or anything that was helpful too?
Oh yeah, like I love that, culture. It is like it's a capitalist economy. It is the American dream is still a possibility. It's still the land of opportunity, and that's based on capitalism at the end of the day. So, in and the attitude is everything. Like we went over at the same time in 2011, and our business was growing at that time when everyone else was like, I suppose, yeah, there was a lot of pain at that time because a lot of people were in real estate. But like I remember when we went there, everyone was talking about how bad the economy was. There was like, only half the car park was full in the shopping centers or the shopping malls as they call them. But we still thought it was great. They thought it wasn't great. Now we can see why, because now you can't get parking in those same shopping malls, But that time, yeah, it was empty. But like, yeah, but there's still, it's kind of like New York right after 9/11. The bounce back ability, you see it in America. It's just like we failed, we went bankrupt, whatever. Let's go again. Do you know what I mean? But they have all these like resources that they can borrow money so easily, they can get investment so easily, things happen so fast, they can get companies to partner with them so quickly, and they do have a positivity there. But it's been rocked in the last couple of years, I feel, with all the political stuff. There's a bit of tension in there. But when you meet like, we met the guy Larry Silverstein that owned the Twin Towers and like his attitude is like, never write us off, never bet against New York, never bet against America. And you can see that belief is there, that they believe they're concerned, I would say today more so, but they still believe they'll be still number one.
Did it rub off on you at all? Because when you talked about the early days, the kind of the thoughts of I'm not going to be able to do this can kind of creep in, right? As you said, especially in the early days. Um, did being in America help that at all, or was it when you had kind of gotten a little bit of success? Was there ever? You said you never gave yourself a tap on the back, which is great, to some degree. But was there ever a time when you could just exhale and say, "Ah, this is working." Like, at what stage did that come?
No, I think it's more, it definitely helped my outlook and my attitude in business. You know, I definitely adopted the American attitude to business. Do you know what I mean? Where you just, like, failure is, it's like what I just said, like, failure can happen, but if it does, it's not the end. Do you know what I mean? I think they embrace failure as it's a learning curve. It's not failure. It's just a bump in the road, or it's just, it's a way that God is guiding you on your path to wherever it may be. And hitting a certain revenue, or having a certain number of employees. That's not the destination, right? And so I do think there's a more of a winning attitude and a winning culture that I adopted. You know what I mean? And I do think it can be present sometimes in Ireland, in certain industries, in certain companies, in certain regions. Even in from the sporting perspective, you can see it sometimes. And so I think, like, I anyway, and I hope the whole company has adopted a belief. Do you know what I mean? And in the early days it was why not, and now, like, I believe that if we're talking to a customer on an opportunity, regardless of who it is and how big they are, I believe that we should win it because we're the best at that particular thing that we're doing for them. And if not, we wouldn't be chasing it. Like, we'll often say that's not for us, or that's not the right type of customer, or that's not the right application, or we just don't do those types of antennas. Whereas, like, if we know we can do it, like, we'll go after it hell for leather. And the problem with that is, like, the sales guys always complain about my attitude in a certain way, because, like, we'll win 10 and I'll complain about the 11th one that we didn't win, and scrutinize that. But it's because I'm trying to learn from it. They're the ones you learn from. And so it's good. The failures are good because we just become better from 'em.
When I was looking at your background and the growth of the company, and I saw how long you'd been in the US, I assumed you'd have a sort of half US, half Irish accent, but you don't have any US accent at all. Do you know how that's happened? Because most people who go to America from Ireland, they do inherit the accent a little
Well,
bit.
look, I'm 51 as well, so I went over when I was a little bit older, I think. And I think it depends on how young you are. Um, I spend a lot of time here. I come back every summer. I'm sure if you talk to people in Enniscorthy, they'll say I'm a Yank. You know what I mean? So I've had to slow down a little bit. Um, but, like, we've Irish people. We've two locations in Ireland. We've Irish people working for us in the States. I have Teams calls every day with Irish people. My wife is Irish. And we come back, like, we're back every summer. We're back at sporadically throughout the year as well. So it's not like we're completely, isolated from the Irish.
So you went over for 6 months and you ended up staying. Why did you end up staying? Was it just the growth of the company over there? You just felt like you had to be around.
Yeah, it was the business it was definitely the business. It was major sacrifice. Like, we went over, and it was we had two kids at the time. We've three now, but, yeah, we moved over there and left our families here and left our lives here. And at the start, it was financial because we couldn't afford the people that we wanted to hire. And then it just started. We found a facility, and when we started hiring, and then, like, it really took off there. Even though we were here and we could fly to Boston the same, length of time. You can get to Boston as quick as I can from San Diego, but it's different when you're there and they feel that comfort factor. I think it's important for American companies to feel that you're in America, that you have a presence in America, that you have people in America. And so that it's just that gives them that peace of mind. If something goes wrong, you're not going to be asleep in Ireland. You're going to be like, on a plane because you're only an hour away, and you're gonna jump on the problem, right? They need that reassurance.
Is it still difficult for you personally at all, being over there? I wouldn't say I suppose do you miss Ireland is the question I have.
I miss the people for sure, you know, like that's what you miss is the people and having. I'd like to have Irish neighbours and you know like that type of thing, and you miss your families. But I love the business culture of America. I love the lifestyle we have in San Diego. It's got over 300 days of sunshine, and although I'm from the sunny southeast, I heard there was a lot of rain there this winter. And you know, once you've lived in the sun, you're kind of you're in a pickle. Then you know, like we lived in Australia for a while, and I always found it difficult to adjust when I came back from the sunshine. The winters can drag you down a little bit. And I started surfing when I was actually hurling in San Diego with St. Peter's in San Diego, and then stopped, and I've been surfing ever since, and I'm hooked on that. And you know, we're spoiled for choice in San Diego, but like we do miss the people, and it's the curse of the immigrant, right? Like when you're there, you want to be home, and then when you're home for a while, you want to go somewhere else again, you know. And we love traveling, and I travel a lot anyway for work. We travel a lot for pleasure as well. But like I suppose this is still home, you know.
Take me back then to just building the company throughout that. So, I mean, from 2 founding, uh, employees, if you like, up to 350, there's a lot of growth. What were the key things there? And not necessarily just growing people, just growing the business. Like, what were the key, unlock parts of that as you went along?
Yeah, I suppose like you're learning as you go along, right? Because even and it did really help that I done those courses, because even though I did business, a little bit of business in college, like after I went to UCD, when you're actually in it and you're doing a course that's even the basics of business, but you can apply it in your everyday working life, it's a game changer, you know. Yeah, so when you can apply it into what you do every day, that's a game changer. So now you're learning the best business practices, and you're applying them in your daily work life. But like thereafter, it's just all about the people. You know what I mean? Like, um, it's what engineers you hire to do the design. Are they engineers that can talk directly to customers? Because we're too small to have project managers. Like now we have them, but back then we don't have project managers or field application engineers. The guy doing the antenna design needs to work directly with the customer. And you know, we were just, I feel like, look, we worked really hard, to be honest with you. We worked all hours of the day and the night. And because we would have to do the financial stuff ourselves, you know, we would have to do all the legal stuff ourselves, all the HR stuff yourself. Um, but I do think it's easier to do it when it's your own thing, you know, because you're feeling it, and you see that it's worthwhile in the long term. Um, but like it's all about, and thereafter it's all about the people that you hire. Can you hire people who believe in your vision and believe in what you're doing, that think you're credible, and are they going to have that same entrepreneurial startup mentality? Not like obviously, you know, 14 to 18-hour days and Saturdays and Sundays, but like when they're in the job, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, are they going to make it happen in their own area that they're on? So it's really important to find the right people. And I found like when you're even today when you're growing, a couple of people that aren't behind you and aren't into the vision, or are toxic or do the gossiping or the backstabbing, like they can create havoc, right? So it's the people that are more important, because if your product fails, which it never has, thankfully, but like obviously we've had quality failures at the factory, in the factory, on the way out the door. Things like that can be fixed. You know, late deliveries, I can fix that with a customer. You know what I mean? I can find a way to get them other product. I can, you know, get on site and show them that I care. We get all other business challenges. I feel like we can fix, whether it's legal, HR issues. But if there's the people issues, they're much harder to fix, because if you have to identify what the issue is first, A lot of the time as the CEO, you're last to know where the problem is and who it is. Um, and a lot of other people just avoid it, or they just become accustomed to it, and they go like, this is, it's almost like they go like, I'm getting used to working with this toxic issue because it's almost like becomes part of their daily life, and they form it as part of a habit. Whereas like, I think that's the most important thing as a CEO, that you create a workplace where everyone else can do their job in a great place without any toxicity, without any backstabbing. That's kind of most important. Create a good work culture. It's never going to be 100%. It's a bit like whack-a-mole because we've 10 locations. But like, you have to work. That's kind of like almost the most important part of my job. Is this a workplace where all these great people that we can have can do their job? And I've realized like one or two people can like demolish that. Do you know what I mean? So it's that's the most challenging part. And like, that's something that's probably not taught to you in on those courses or in college. Do you know what I mean? Or whatnot. How do you deal with people like that? Right? What do you do? And so identifying it, nipping it in the bud, dealing with it, that's very, I remember the first time doing all that. It's very stressful. And it really gets to you. And because you've never done it before, and I was probably still youngish at the time as a CEO doing it.
You might be afraid that the person might leave if they're and they might be good at their job, even if they're kind of toxic maybe for the
Yeah,
culture.
I think that well, no, it's not. It's just like, what do I do? Like, how do I, because they might, like, even though they're causing havoc, you might have a great relationship with them. You know, they're not, as I said, you're the last to know. I think, geez, they're great, and I can't believe it. And you have to investigate it, and just sitting down with someone for the first time, and 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 figuring out, how do I think, like, when you're younger and you're inexperienced, you're making it about yourself. Do you know what I mean? Whereas now I'm 51, I've been doing this for a long time. It's not about me. Do you know what I mean? And so then I'm there going, this is not about me, and it's about the team, and it's about the company, and how do I get this back on the right track?
And how does it usually work out, Dermot? Is it like what are the decisions there that need to be made, or the actions that have to be done from your side?
You have to investigate first and talk to people, have honest conversations with them. You know what I mean? Like, and obviously, like, there's rules with HR and all that, but like, I think you just have to listen to people and talk to them, and get to the core of the issue. And then when you identify it, always giving that person a chance. You know what I mean? Saying like, here's the issue, because people are they're defensive at first, but at the same time, no one really wants to be like that. You know what I mean? And so they're always defensive at first. Um, and but if you give them a chance, um, it's rare that they change. It's funny, even though you're showing them what the issue is, it's rare that they actually change. I've seen it happen sometimes, but and so then when you give people a chance, I think and it comes to where it's not working out and you have to let them go. They're very reasonable about it because you've given them a chance. Do you know what I mean?
What about the culture? Like, do you have a formal culture that you're kind of measuring these incidences off, if you like? Is that part of the conversation?
There is, like, there's obviously HR systems and metrics in place. But for me, that culture is still my gut instinct. Okay. It's kind of like the early days of the business. Your gut instinct is telling you it's going to be successful. It's not any market research report, or what a customer says. It's your gut. And I think managing a culture is, even though it's maybe not, again, not what you'd learn in college, and maybe it's not best practice, but the way I do it is based on my gut. I know when stuff, I feel like I know when something's up. I feel like I know when stuff's not right with people. Um, and that's when I can talk to them about it.
What about rather than kind of, so we've talked a bit about the problems that can arise, right? And maybe the barriers maybe to growth. Was there ever a particular customer that you signed up, or an acquisition or something along the way, where you kind of thought, even just for a split second, not that I can relax, but I feel a bit more secure in this now. You know, I feel like this is a business that's working, and we're going in the right direction.
Not definitely not a customer. Like one thing you cannot take for granted is a customer, that they'll be there in 6 months or a year. Like, I know that for a fact. And also, we work on a lot of projects that just don't go ahead. With the biggest technology companies in the world, we work with them, and a lot of the stuff they do doesn't go ahead. They're trialing stuff. They're working on projects and they kill it. Or then you might lose it to a competitor, whatever the case may be. So we definitely don't rely on that. I do think that the belief, I just the belief that it comes from within me myself. I know I know I'll make it work if it's not working. If there's no market for antennas tomorrow, I'll I, thi- I if it comes as a surprise to me that quickly, then I deserve it. Do you know what I mean? If I have my finger on the pulse, if I'm talking to our customers, if I'm working with our sales and marketing team, if I'm seeing what's happening in customer service, if I'm listening to, the counsel of our financial department and my CFO, all that, I've no excuse, right? You will see the issues early on, and you'll have the opportunity to pivot. And we've had failures. Like, we've done 6 acquisitions, 3 of them are not in the company anymore, quite honestly. And so you'll get stuff wrong, but you'll get stuff right. But if it's all about, are you in the business? Are you in the trenches? Are you listening to people? Then you'll get the warning signs early on, and you can do something about it. Like, obviously, COVID was a hit that we didn't expect. All the factories shut down. That was a big one. But we got through it. We've, gotten through a couple of wars recently that are still ongoing and stuff like that. So I think we're building up more and more resiliency all the time. So that's what gives me belief, is that we made it through that and we're better for it. Do you know what I mean? And we've made it through some shocks in our market and we're better for it. So I feel like one thing that we have as a company is resilience. And then that's what gives me the belief that I know we're tough enough to get through tough times. And because, like, even me as an entrepreneur, I'm not smarter, I'm not harder working, but I am resilient. I know that about myself. So, if you want to get into a fight with me on the business front, you just need to be ready for a long, drawn out, you know, fight. I'm not going to give up. Do you know what I mean? And I'm going to keep going until, like, we're so persistent. We're winning customers today that we've been talking to since we started the company. So some of them, it's taken us 15, 20 years for us to convert it as a customer. Because in our industry, that's what it takes sometimes. So, but yeah, I'm not going, like, that's, it's one of the boxers said, you'll knock me down, but you'll never knock me out. And that's kind of the way I am.
Do you personally need to work as hard as you did, um, say 10 years ago?
No, I can't. I'm 51. I can't. Do you know what I mean? I just have to accept that. It'd be cool if I came on here and said, yeah, I do all that, but I can't, right? But and you don't have I don't have the same um need or want to work that hard anymore. Like, I'm not saying, like, I'm always on, like, I'm looking at the business every day. I'm on the phone every day in the business. I'm looking at the emails, the Teams messages every day, right? It's not like I'm not doing that, but I'm not, like, I can, yesterday I don't play much golf, but yesterday I played golf. Do you know what I mean? Next week I'm going on holidays. And so you have to, I think, as you get older, you have to hand the reins over to the younger team members to do that, those parts of it that do take the long hours to drive, and the getting into the trenches part. And I'm also not as good at it anymore. So, like, our CFO and CRO are younger, they're in their early to mid 30s. They know more about using AI to their advantage than I do. Do you know what I mean? So, they are more efficient at solving problems than I am, and they are doing a better job in most of those areas than I am. So my focus today is more on managing our shareholders' overall strategy and M&A, and then I'm more like the fireman. So I'll help them put out the fires when they need to be put out. Again, some of the if there's major HR issues or culture issues, then I'll help with that. So I kind of see my job as, can I make sure that everyone can do their job to the best of their ability?
How important was the financial side, your personal financial side? So obviously at the start when you were paying yourself a salary, I'm sure it was, as soon as I can pay myself a salary, it's going to be great. Have you looked out into the future as to, um, is it about a windfall, or what's the kind of, does it motivate you?
It did. It not as much anymore, but that's because I've already made a lot of money, to be honest with you. Um, so when we didn't, because we didn't have the external investment like professionals like we did 3 years ago. So now we're majority owned by private equity. So I took some money off the table, but even before that, we paid ourselves dividends every year the company would be successful. So we've made a lot of money over the last 10 years. Like maybe not that big check, but enough for us to be secure and happy financially, and that is not what it doesn't motivate me any longer. Um, because I love what I do. I'm happy in the job I work in today, and my purpose as a business person is to find the right long term home for this company. It's currently 75% owned by private equity and 25% by me, and they'll obviously want to get out. They want to get out in probably 2 to 3 years. I don't, but I think it's my job to find the right home where we maintain the growth of the company, where the culture of the company is protected, and where the brand continues to grow. Because we've built a strong brand within the industry we're in. May not necessarily be known by people on the street, but within the industrial technology industry, it's a strong brand and it's growing. And I want to keep that going. So I'm kind of flexible on what the future looks like, um, because you know, like I'm 3 years into managing a private equity owned company. The average is 2.5, right? So whether they leave because they don't want to do it anymore, or whether they get pushed out because they're not going to get the job done, um, we're all motivated to get the job done. Everyone benefits from it, and then the next time we see what the options are. I know because we're doing very well as a company, we'll have tremendous options to consider and look at, from who the next owner of the company is. But for me, that's not whoever's writing the highest check. It's whoever where the right fit is.
How did you, just on that, how did you find the right fit for the private equity owner that you have now? And what kind of caused, was it, did someone approach you, or was it, we need to take on external funding?
No, we didn't need external funding. We needed so me and the original founder, we just wanted to part ways in terms of he wanted to get into more of a software business and recurring revenue type business, whereas I wanted to stay focused on our antennas and our antenna business. And so we looked at various options over the years, and then COVID happened, and it was like shoulder to the wheel time. And then after COVID, um, the best way we found to do it was, for the other shareholders to exit the business. And so we bought in. So we ran a process. So we ran a process to find an investment banker. And we chose Houlihan Lokey, and then they ran a process for us to sell the company, where I was remaining flexible. So even at that time, I wanted to stay in the company. I wanted to actually buy a majority stake in the business. So I owned 45% at the time. I said I want to take it over. Um, but the one good thing I did was I spoke to a lot of CEOs that were both in, out, had, sold to private equity, bought it back from private equity, had gone public, the whole, remit of all potential business scenarios. And what everyone kind of concluded on was, when you bring on private equity, whether you own 51% or 61% or 21%, the restrictions they'll put on you are the same. They're not going to put in that kind of money and not have, you know, certain ways they want the company run, and decisions you'll have to make with them. And then loads of guys said, you should de-risk yourself as well, because you've been doing it for over 20 years. If something does happen and you want, money to be, and if you don't like him as well, make sure you take enough money off the table. If you don't like him, you can just walk away and say, guys, give me my check when you're done with this project in 3 or 4 years' time. So that was really good advice. And so I went into the deal flexible, looking. So the number one thing I looked for was cultural fit. So that was number one. Can I like, do I enjoy going out with these guys for dinner? Can I play golf with these guys? Can I, sit down if there's a problem with this team and figure it out? That was number one. Number two, did they have experience in our industry? So do they have knowledge in our market? And then number three was, do they have a successful track record? So, they ticked all those three boxes. But the most important is the cultural fit. And we apply that now to acquisitions that we are doing and have done as well. That's the most important, because if their products are great, if the teams don't fit, it's going to cause too many issues. Kind of what we alluded to in the past about it'll damage your culture so much you'll actually end up going backwards rather than forwards. So I think for the next, we've got on great with the private equity owners. But I don't, the next round it'd be the same thing over again. Do you know what I mean? I feel like, and I'd like to see what else um is out there from potential strategics, or some of these companies like Berkshire Hathaway that bring a lot of companies under their umbrella without using debt to finance the deal. So we'll see. I think it's going to be exciting. I think, I'm the elder statesman in the company. We've a young company actually, and I think the team view this as a great learning experience and they enjoy it. So it's not like we ventured on these road shows and people were like scared or resistant to it. In fact, we all really enjoyed it. It was a lot of hard work, but we learned a ton from it. And what I like about private equity is they've given us a discipline and a drive that we just wouldn't have had from a financial perspective if they weren't there.
Well, hiring a young team, did that kind of happen or organically, or was it something that you did strategically in the
No, it's
decision you
happened
made?
organically. Yeah, they've all come up through the ranks. To be honest with you, but it's. I think it goes back to the. I think I've seen a lot of our competitors are all guys that look like me and older. Do you know what I mean? And people get stuck in their ways, and you think doing stuff, I know better, and doing stuff the old way is the best way, but that's not the case, especially these days with all the way things are changing. The pace of change has increased. They're always been changing in our market, but I really see the pace of change increasing. So if you don't keep bringing in young people and giving them a chance, and just handing it over to them, then I think that's what's allowed. I'd say that's where I can see our next pace of growth is coming from. You know,
What do you think you'd be doing if you weren't running this business?
You're figuring out how to grow a business to run.
Yeah.
So it'd be definitely another business. Um, and I don't know, like I'd be comfortable moving into any electronics business, whether it was, cameras or mounts for cameras or bags for cameras, or once it's technology related, I think I'd be comfortable in it.
I'm kind of I'm listening to you talking now for the past hour, and I was just thinking, this guy is going to have huge trouble trying to retire. Is what I was thinking, which is why I asked that question. I just couldn't see you slowing down at any stage.
It's funny you say that, because after the COVID experiment, my wife said, like, you retiring is a bad idea. You being at home and not like without that purpose is a bad idea. And I've spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs that have sold, and unless you have a specific plan, it's probably a bad idea, right? Because like I I don't have an ambition to play golf twice a week, or I'd like to surf more and travel more, but I think I can do that anyway. You know what I mean? But yeah, I love it. Do you know what I mean? And I love competing, and I love fighting, and I love once again, the thing that motivates me the most is people telling me you won't be able to do it or you can't do it. So, I'd encourage, if my team, any of them ever listen to this podcast, tell me I can't do it, because then I'll do my best to do it. So I think it's the same. If probably somebody probably might say at some stage, you're getting long in the tooth now, you should probably retire. I think that'd be a great motivator for me. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think once you have a plan, right? Like I've found investing doesn't float my boat. You know what I mean? Other industries don't float my boat. I love this industry. I love working in it. I love the people in it. I really enjoy traveling, going to trade shows, visiting customers. We get access to a lot of new stuff that's happening in the technology realm from a hardware perspective, like more recently, probably robotics and stuff like that. And like I just love all that stuff anyway. And I really enjoyed transitioning the company over from private shareholders and doing the whole private equity and learning about that. And I think I'm going to really enjoy the next stage of that as well. So as long as I enjoy it, I keep doing it. And I think the view of retirement has changed anyway, right? If you can like avoid those long hours and stress, then I think you're okay. It's stress, right? Stress is what burns people out. So if you can avoid stress, and then I think you're good. And I think, I'm in a place where like I don't get stressed from work. Do you know what I mean? And maybe it's because we're in a more comfortable position these days. But I think as well as that, it's not important. Like this job used to be so important to me. This company used to be so important to me. And it's gone down the ranks a lot in the list of things that are important in my life. So you know, I'm grateful for my health and all that type of stuff, and my family and all, and that's what's more important. And stress only comes when that stuff, if something happens in that area of my life. Like work stress is, I don't it's not stressful anymore for me. These are all problems we can fix, we can handle. You know what I mean? Especially I think after the COVID thing, I wasn't in control of that. That's for sure. And we had to just like let it go and let things work themselves out. And they did, despite the fact that revenue completely slumped and all the factories were closed. There was nothing we could do about it. So I think avoiding stress is the key. Then you don't have to retire.
It's interesting that you mentioned Berkshire Hathaway there. Because, Warren Buffett has only stepped down last year from being the CEO. And my understanding is he's still there every day. He's still, whether he's chairman now or whether he has an actual role in the company, I think he's still there. And, he's 94 or something like that now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I suppose retirement has changed for a lot of people in Canada.
Yeah, like I think for me, like it's more about finding a purpose, as you go along. Like as I said, my purpose right now is to find the right long-term home for the company. Because you can't keep going through rounds of private equity. Like we could definitely do another one and that would be fine. But like I don't think you can keep going three, four, five. So what's the right long-term home for the company? Or as I said, the brand is protected and stuff. So that's my purpose right now. That could take 2 years, that could take 10 years. I don't know. But I feel like I wouldn't even be considering, you know, not being the CEO until that's done. And then if the new guys are happy with me, do you know what I mean? Like I would be very ambitious. Like I'd be talking like, buy us, but like put a lot of the stuff you already have under us. Allow us to take on the growth. We can grow it. We can be like we should be much bigger than we are today, in my opinion, based on the people we have, the tools that we have, the products that we have. So like how do we get it like up to $1 billion in sales annually? Like that's a kind of a target that I have as well. And then it's that gut instinct as well. I think my gut will tell me when it's time to step to step away. But I'd still like to be involved, whether it's like, back in sales or helping out or supporting the management team. But like I think you'll know when they don't find you useful anymore.
Dermot O'Shea, thank you very much for coming in. It's been very entertaining, very interesting, and I've learned a lot. So thank you so much for coming in. I think it's going to be a good one.
No, thanks for having me, Connor. It's great to talk to someone in Ireland and do a podcast in Ireland. I love that. So I appreciate you having me on and for the invite.
Excellent. Wish you the best of luck.
You too. Thank you.